Hi, this is the Well Aligned podcast. This podcast is for anyone feeling stuck in their career and you're looking to transition into a health and wellness career. We're going to interview successful professionals who have done just that, transitioned from a traditional career into a health and wellness career. My name is Sandy. I've worked in the health and wellness career space for the last 25 years. I'm excited that you're here, so let's get started. Hey, just wanted to share that if you or you know someone who has made that transition into a health and wellness career, to please reach out to me. I would love to have you on the podcast. You can find me at sandy@thewellaligned.com or on my Instagram at The Well Aligned Career or Facebook at The Well Aligned. So today on the podcast, we had Mariah Kimball. Now, Mariah actually started out as a teacher and she made a transition into nutritional therapy. And then from there, she went into where she is today, which is a love mentor and life coach where she helps women find their empowerment. But something I want you to really listen into today is majority of the podcast is about leaning into your intuition and your skill set when selecting a career. Enjoy the podcast. First of all, thank you for coming today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming to the Well Aligned podcast. And I'm really excited to share your story with everyone. So why don't we just start out by you introducing yourself. Just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll dive into some of our other questions today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Mariah Kimball. I am a true love mentor. So I help women really find their wholeness so that they can connect to the love that fuels this life, right? But that's not where I started. I started teaching seventh grade literature, junior high literature. And I was wildly unhappy and unsatisfied. And so my husband, who I love dearly, oh my goodness, and we're going to be celebrating, I think, our 11th wedding anniversary tomorrow. So this is kind of cool that this is today, like talking about my story and where I came from, right? This is like, kind of wild, full circle. And he was so supportive and he was like, go for it. Like, you don't need to teach forever. I thought I was going to be one of those teachers who taught for 30 years, that had all the kids in the community. And 5 years in, I was like, nope, this is not working. And so I went back to school and I became a nutritional therapy practitioner. And I did that for a while. I went out on my own and then I worked for a doctor. And then I was headhunted essentially by a business strategist who ran a really magnificent business using astrology and business strategy. And I managed all of her group programs, right? That's right up my alley. And then as of April, I'm out doing my own thing, really focusing on love. And it's a wild journey and none of it really feels like, if you look at it on paper, that it makes sense, right? That I got from teaching literature to really focusing on love and what is that love. But every step of the way felt so right, and there was, dark night of the soul that happened. I have 2 children and they have been a huge push to really find my authentic self and what I'm supposed to be doing. And when she was born, she really, essentially called me out on not being true to myself. And it broke me in a lot of ways. And I had to pick myself up off the floor, the shower floor to be specific, to really get to where I am today in a life full of abundance and love and like living exactly the way I want.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much. It's just has so many great parts to it that I would love to get a little granular.
Yeah.
And let's talk about that transition back in April. Well, actually, it would be before April, right? You were probably, the wheels were spinning in your head about what was next. So can you talk to us about the steps you took? And maybe was there a pivotal moment where you said, I have to make this change. I have to do this.
Yeah. And, it's so interesting because we know before we know, right? And so back in October of last year, I started doing some things on the side. I was just following my creative spiral. And I really dove into some elements that I just wanted to play with and have fun. So I'm highly spiritual. I love crystals. That's a big part of my work, right? The metaphysical world. Highly intuitive and all the things. So back in last October, excuse me, I began playing and really pulling some pieces of creativity that I had been working with through the final stages of like, let's put this out in the world. I want to share these stories, these beautiful crystal workings and meditations and healings. And so I started doing that, just following like that thread of desire, like what makes me really happy. So I was doing all my regular work, managing program and seeing clients through this other company. And then I was just dabbling. I was just playing and following those strings. And I kind of put them on Etsy, and I didn't do a whole ton with them. I just kind of put them out there, right? And then I kind of like built a website and I did these things, and I was still working for this other company. And I was really doing this dance of how can I honor all the magnificent work I was doing, because I loved my job. I loved it. And how can I also follow my passion and really do this thing that like really fills me, right? My work was really stressful, high performing. I worked with people who were go, 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 do all the things. That's not me. So it's just not my energy, right? I'm a little bit slower. I need a lot of rest. I love to like luxuriate in the bed. Like I'm just not a go, go, go person. I never will be. And so I was doing this balancing act. But I kind of unknowingly really set myself up. And then in April, my contract ended and was not renewed, kind of unexpectedly, but expectedly. And I kind of looked around and I was like, oh, wow, what am I going to do? And then I was like, oh, I have all this stuff already set up, right? That doesn't mean that there wasn't this massive grieving process and that it was easy and that I had all my offerings set up. No, absolutely not, right? I just had the bones. I had the structure because I had been following my intuition. I had really leaned in and followed my passions. And so that set me up for when things really did shift and pivot. Now, I would say that this pivot was one of my easier pivots that I've had in my career, because I am in my body. I am listening to my intuition. I am filled with love and following those things that I love, right? So I'm doing CrossFit, I'm doing jujitsu. I'm allowing my husband to support me. I'm honoring my children in the ways that really support them in my mothering, so that other pieces fall a little bit easier. I'm not fighting my life. Do you know what I mean? I've kind of figured out what works for me. So this last transition was pretty graceful. Now, I can say that however many months later we are. It did not feel graceful. It hurt. It was, devastating. And I was heartbroken. And all those things can be true. Also, it was pretty graceful, and I can rewrite history and how I feel about that transition. And how I look at my coworkers and my boss and all of that. So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
It does. And I really appreciate you being so raw and honest, as opposed to just saying, oh, you know what, these are the things I did. It was really easy. You touched on when that pivot got a little tough.
Oh, yeah.
And what resources did you turn to when it did get tough?
I've set myself up really well in that category where I always, one of my non-negotiables is I need to have somebody, a coach, a therapist, a something, right, who I can lean on, who has no stake in my life, who is not a best friend, who is not a husband, who is not a coworker or a friend, anything, right? And so I have this woman, her name is Deborah, and I've seen her once a month for 3 years. Now, I am a new woman 15 million times over, right? Compared to when I started with her to now. But she having someone who can ask the hard questions, who can make you sit in that uncomfortableness, right? Well, Mariah, what part of this is your responsibility? Your inside world is reflected in the outside. So you have a hand in this, right? Like, let's get really honest with yourself, right? So having that person, oh my gosh, is so important. And that person who you resonate with, right? Not someone who you don't look forward to going to, who kind of ticks you off, you know is good for you. I don't enjoy going to Deborah by any means. It's kind of like one of those things where I'm like, she breaks me before she puts me back together. But having said that, you need to have somebody, you need to have a support system that really works for you, and you need to see them when things are good and when things are really hard, because the work you do when things are good will, oh my gosh, support you so much when things are falling apart around you. And you have these really basic tools that you can work with, right? So mine is Deborah. My husband was a massive support, right? When I can be really honest and vulnerable with him and be like, I'm a mess right now. I need you to step up and take a little bit more off my plate, right? I know that exercise, I have to exercise. If I don't exercise, I'm a mess. So as simple as that may seem, I really leaned on exercise. I really leaned on things that I know fill me. And I'll never forget. So I do jujitsu, and I was a mess. The whole month of April, I was a mess. And I have this rolling partner. And I looked at her and I was like, I'm here, but I'm not here. I'm a mess. And that's all I had to say, right? And she goes, yeah, you're just not yourself. That's okay. Like, let's do it, and just, I think allowing those people around you who are safe you can be vulnerable and be like, I'm just a mess. I'm here, but I'm kind of going through the motions. Because that's a big part of it, is like getting honest with yourself, because faking it doesn't work. There's a piece of it that's like, fake it till you make it. Absolutely. Like, I believe I'm successful in all of those pieces, but at the same time, you have to be honest where you are in your journey so that you can seek support and do the things they're going to hold your foundation together.
Agree 100%. It's really important. I couldn't agree more. It's really important to have those important components in your life that you can turn to when you know you're going to be pivoting, or just when you're not pivoting, right? It's just important to know that you have those to fall back on when times are tough. You mentioned exercise. For me, it's the same way. I need to have exercise in my life every other day, and yoga is a huge component for me. I really need to have that. So I think that's a really important piece to all of this, to your story too, and to share with people, that make sure that you're not just focusing 100%, you're not dumping yourself into your business, but make sure you have those outside interests to fall back on that you can really turn to.
And I think recognizing the pivot isn't just one moment. Like, the pivot doesn't just like happen in April of this year where I'm like pivoting and I'm all of a sudden done. Like, no, like this week, even I had working out is where we kind of have landed, but like, this is a piece where like a lot of emotion comes out of me. I spent in 3/4 of a workout bawling my eyes out. I'm like running laps around my gym, like sobbing my eyes out, because like the pivot's still happening, right? Like, yes, work is magnificent and all the things, but some things aren't working. And I've realized that, which is so magnificent, and it kind of culminates all together, and you hold it together, and then you look around and you're like, oh, well, this isn't what I expected. And we're going to pivot a little bit more, but it doesn't have to be like a full pivot. It could just be like a head turn, but that head turn can have massive impact,
Yes.
and we hold that in our body. So honoring that's so important.
And talking more about pivoting too, when we go back to your story, we talk about who you learned from, or how did you learn to, when you were transitioning into where you are today, Can you talk to us a little bit about certifications or schools or mentors, just how you learn to develop into the business that you are today?
Yeah. So it's so interesting because the first career I left of teaching, I really didn't have anyone. There wasn't a mentor, there wasn't something. And if I ever jumped off a cliff in my life, it was that moment when I handed in my resignation not to teach. And that's a whole nother story that's like, oh my God, seeped in so much yuck. Um, and I literally was like, so I put myself through school for nutrition school. So we were married, we had a toddler. I was working full time and I was pregnant with our second. And I was giving up my job all at the same time of like teaching. And so my life was chaos and I had to go to New York. So I live in like rural New Hampshire in this little country bumpkin. I had to go to New York 3 times, New York City 3 times during my schooling. The first time I went, I was pregnant. The second time I had an infant and I had to bring my mom. She was like massively tiny. I want to say she was like maybe 2 months old at the time, not even. And then we went again and I managed to go on my own, but she must have been like 7 or 8 months at that time. If I can do that, I swear to God, anybody can do anything. Like, absolutely. You just have to have that courage. And so, and recognizing that the learning never stops, right? I mean, the moment you stop learning, you're dead in the water. And so, yes, I can say that I went through, nutritional therapy school and I became a nutritional therapist and I did all X, Y, and Z, but I've never stopped learning since, the moment I stepped foot in school. And I think finding those mentors, I realized how much easier these transitions are, because that first transition I did, everybody thought I was crazy, legitimately thought I was crazy, like off my rocker. And I probably was, right? And I didn't have anybody else who done this. I didn't have anyone who had like paved the way and I could see it. As I got into this world, I then recognized like, oh, this isn't all that abnormal. People do this all the time, and you find mentors and things like that. And so, I had a woman who essentially carried me through my dark night of the soul. And I went to her every 3 weeks. And she was the first person who told me it's okay to not enjoy being a mom. And that was a big part of this journey of transitioning my work, was getting okay with who I am, because how I show up in my work, who I am as a person, and how I feel surrounding me, my relationship with myself, my relationship with my family, that all impacts how I show up in the workplace and how I serve my business and how I serve my clients. And so she was the first person who kind of gave me permission to be myself. And in giving me permission to be myself, all these magnificent women started coming out of the woodwork, right? And these women who had these big, massive corporate jobs, really masculine lifestyles, and they shifted and they started living in their feminine and following their heart and doing the creative thing. And then you're like, oh, I can do this. And what's really cool is my mentor has shifted. So I have had like 2 or 3 women who I've been like, that's freaking amazing. Like, you're doing it. You're teaching me so much, right? And so this last position I had with this woman, who had lived in corporate for 30 years. And then she stepped to do this more feminine business using astrology, learning business strategy. She taught me how to run an online business. I had no idea what I was doing. And she trusted me, right? She was like, you're a teacher, you can run program, you get curriculum. Maybe you don't know my specific curriculum, but you know how to teach. So this is what you're going to do, and you're going to help me with this. And through that, because I had to learn how to teach business, I had to learn business, right? So I was essentially thrown into the deep end of the pool. Trusting, even if I didn't trust myself, trusting that the people around me saw something in me that I couldn't see. I was like, all right, we're just going to do this. This is where you fake it till you make it. You're like, I can do this. I can learn anything. Like, this is easy. Like, I have the resources, right? I can figure anything out if there's trust. And so really leaning on that trust piece and believing that other people saw something in me that maybe I couldn't quite see yet was key. And I owe so much to these women who trusted me, who said, yeah, you can do this. When I was like I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can be a mom, I don't know if I can run a business, right? I don't know. So that's a huge piece of it, just trusting and loving yourself, because trust is love and love is trust. So they kind of go hand in hand, and that come to find out is my work.
I think that's a really important message to share with people, is that also that you keep building upon your skill set. So
Yeah.
what you were doing previously, that's not the last job you're ever going to have in your life. You just keep building. And for you being a teacher, you were able to build upon that skill set. And then you just kept going to the next level. You kept going to the next level, and then you would fine tune it, and then you'd go to the next level. I think that's really important to share with people, and it gives people aspiration and motivation as well to
Yeah.
keep moving, just to keep
Oh,
moving forward.
and to open up that definition of like, what for me it was like, okay, what does teaching look like? Who are my students, right? Like that, when I started this journey and I was in my early 20s, that definition was really narrow, really narrow. And then as you start to kind of look around and you stretch and you really look at your skill set and you widen that view and make it like wider, and you look around, you're like, oh, I can apply this stuff everywhere, which is really cool. Like I'm really good at standing in front of a crowd and leading a crowd. Like that's part of teaching, like also like pulling the pieces, like knowing what this person needs versus this person needs, like seeing the holes in things. That's part of what I'm really good at. Weaving the threads together from like stuff that doesn't look related. Like that's also a part of my skill set, so there's a lot of things that we overlook. And sometimes, part of the work I did with the company I left doing business strategy, helping entrepreneurs build their business, was really looking at what are your talents and what are your skills. And sometimes you need to ask somebody else. Sometimes you can't see because those things come so easy. We don't see them as talents. Because talents come easy to us. Skills we work, right? Like you just like grind at those skills or things you work on over time. And a lot of times you're proud of that, right? Like I have a master's degree in teaching. I worked really hard for that. But my talents are like the intuitive piece, the weaving and all of this. So sometimes asking like somebody close to you to start pinpointing these is the best place to start, especially when you're like working your resume and things like that. Like sometimes it takes like somebody else to show you all your magic.
No doubt. And now I would like to fast forward and talk about your business today.
Yeah.
So can you share what you're doing today? And let's just talk a little bit about your services as well that you
Yeah.
offer.
And I love this question because I am also in another pivot right now, which feels so good, right? Because back in April, when I started things, when we first do that, right? A lot of what I did was out of fear. Oh my God, I've lost my job. What am I going to do? And so a lot of my offerings were built out of fear. And so when I looked around the end of last month or the beginning of last month, I was like, I don't like what I'm doing. I had a membership. I had these big, wide offerings that were kind of surface level. And I'm like, I don't love doing this. This is draining. And so what I'm doing now is I'm just working one-on-one with clients. I'm working one-on-one with women, mostly moms, who really want to find wholeness, who are unhappy. We dive deep. That's what I love, because transformation, everybody deserves to live the most magnificent life. And I truly live the most magnificent life. When I look around at my life, I have so much to brag about in the most beautiful way. And, I want to circle back. I think bragging is so important. And especially as women and as entrepreneurs, we don't do that. And when you brag from a place of reverence for yourself and of love for yourself, it's not this, I have 4 candy bars and you only have 1, right? Like, no, it's like, oh my gosh. So like I can brag that I have oh my gosh, the most magnificent marriage and I love my life. And I've got there's so much to brag about. I want every woman to be able to do that. I listen to women and they're like, they're basically single mothers, but they're married and they don't love their bodies and everything is hard. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be like that. And so diving really deep into the discovery of who we are and loving those shadows and those dark pieces of who you are. Oh my gosh, that is my favorite work. So I work one-on-one. I don't require a big container. You can just do a couple sessions with me. And I work on time that feels really good to me so that I can arrive fully for my clients, which feels really good. And we're really working on wholeness, on being whole, of like putting this container around yourself and be like, yeah, this is who I am and I'm her.
Well, that was going to be another question I had for you. What excites you about your business? But I can tell you really get passionate and you light up when you're talking about that transition, another pivot from what you were doing to now just working one-on-one with women, doing that coaching. And I
Oh,
can tell that you're really passionate about it. And I was going to ask you, what about your business really excites you? But
yeah.
you answered it. Actually, another question I have for you, I think people would be curious to know is what is it about your business? If you were to give someone advice that were making this transition into working, let's just say working one-on-one with women and life coaching, what advice would you give someone who was looking to dive into this type of business?
Mm, I, cliche, but just do it. Like, just start. Really, just start. It's funny. I would start with making a list of qualifications that you already have. Build that belief bank of yourself, and to give you the courage to begin, I think is really important. But also recognizing that you don't arrive and just start coaching and start transforming people's lives if your life is not transforming and you are not also growing as a person. And so I think really recognizing that when you start this work, it's really like legitimately the beginning of building you, and you need to become more potent. So being open to become the most potent version of yourself so that you can offer your clients this really luscious, authentic experience is so important, because my flavor of love and helping moms is going to be so different from somebody else's. So you may think, oh, there's already thousands and hundreds of women who do this. Yeah, but they're not you, right? Nobody is special, but we're all unique. And that was something one of my mentors taught me, like, nobody's special. Not a single person on this planet is special, but we're wildly unique. And your unique signature and flavor is gonna match with women or people or your clientele who nobody else can reach. And so recognizing what your special magic is, that's what's most important. And often that just starts with the list of like building up that belief bank of how magnificent you are. Even if you have to turn to somebody and be like, hey, you tell me what's so great about me. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but your belief bank has to be massive if you're going to help other people transform.
Is there anything looking back that you would do differently in your business?
It's so funny because I used to think if I had gone to nursing school, my life would have been so much better instead of a teacher. And I've quickly realized in the past like year or two, like, no, absolutely not. Like, that was not the right thing to do. But what that has taught me is like, there's no regrets. Like, there's no going back wishing I did something different, because everything I did has led me to where I am. Even those mistakes, even those failures, those offerings that didn't, happen, the classes where nobody showed up, like, I learned something from those, whether it was messaging or who my client is or location, like all those things have led me here. So no, I don't wish I had done anything different. Maybe take a breath and pause and not stew in that fear. But that's part of the process, that we have to honor even the shadows, even the darkness.
No, that's true. That's so true. Taking a breath is the best advice that you could give people, because
Yeah.
we get on that hamster wheel. We get so caught up in doing, 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 doing. And you even touched on it early on that it's not about go, 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 but taking a step back and viewing it from a much larger lens, right? And look at what am I doing here? And I need to take a step back and I need to take a breath.
It's
That's
so
really
funny.
important. Yeah.
One of the activities I often have my clients take is, we're going to take 10 breaths. 10, all freaking 10. And a lot of people will stop at like 7 or 8 and they'll be like, That's enough. No, it actually isn't. You need all 10 breaths to really sink into your body, to ground yourself, to like clear. Like when you do 10 breaths, it resets everything. I swear to God, it's like this magic number that it changes everything. If you can take 10 breaths, even when your children are freaking out and you just take 10 breaths, they often clear themselves. Like just pause, just pause. Like there's so much power in the pause. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Thank you for sharing that. That is the best advice that I've heard in a really long time. I'm gonna start practicing it starting today, Mariah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to transition into just touching on the launch of your business. Are there any marketing techniques or tips or resources that you can share with people in their business that you've utilized that have been really, really powerful for you?
Yeah, man, this is like the bane of my existence. Because it's so important. It is so important. And it's really important that this is like authentic to you, that it's truthful, that it's got your flavor and your magnificence. And I don't know why this is coming up, but I've spent so much time learning about messaging, so much time. So when I was program manager for this company, part of our high-end clients, we worked with entrepreneurs. And part of their package was they got to work with a copywriter once a week. We had a professional copywriter come in and she would teach all the things. Oh my gosh, it was magnificent. And I had to sit in that class for a year and a half, almost 2 years. I sat in listening in copywriting class, messaging. Oh my gosh, you name it, for a year and a half, an hour every week, every Monday from 1 to 2. And then I came to launch my business. And what did I do? I hired someone to do it. I swear to God, I could have done it. I could have done it. But oh my gosh, there is so much to it. Yes, I could tell you all the things, like you need to use the AMI analyzer and use this and the keywords and it's got to look right on the page. But at the end of the day, I hate to say it, hiring a professional to do it is worth every penny. Because it goes back to what we've been talking about of like, sometimes it's really hard for entrepreneurs to see their magic and to really pull out the threads of what they do that makes them unique and different. And sometimes an outside voice, it's just like the magic sauce. And so, it's probably not what anyone wants to hear, right? Or the other thing I would recommend is find someone you really love. Like, oh my gosh, you just drool over all their things, right? And then model yours after them. You don't copy it, but you look at how it's outlined. Where are their picture placements? Where, like, and I'm going to see that and I'm going to put my magic into that framework, right? You're not copying. If you copy, it's not going to work, right? Because there's so much yuck in that. But like seeing it as like a framework and like a vision board for yourself, like, this is what I want someday. Like, this is, oh my gosh, they're like your gold standard, and you go after that. And you recognize that, right? Because at the end of the day, making a sales page is pretty formulaic, right? You've got the hero, you've got the thing, you've got the bullet points, whether you come at it from like pain points or like positivity. It depends. It depends on who you are, what your clients are, what your flavor is. It's so complicated. Never mind the freaking funnels. And oh my gosh, like don't even get me started. So I could do it all. I absolutely could. Do I want to do it all? No, my energy is much more better spent in other places.
You shared really important steps. And I think it goes back to a budget that you have. But I think for most people starting out, it's try to model after someone that you really appreciate, that you get super excited about when you look at their content, try to model them, create a vision board, and then eventually as you grow, you can outsource, you can hire people to do that. Because I'm in the same situation as that. I'm doing everything. Do I get jazzed about doing it all? No. Can I do it all? It's going to reach a point where I can't, and eventually I will need to outsource, but these are the necessary steps that you have to take when you're in business for yourself.
Yeah. And, if you're not willing to invest, are you really dedicated to this? That would be my question. You know what I mean? Because there's got to be some sort of, I truly believe there's got to be some sort of risk, not saying you need to go in millions of dollars worth of debt, but there's got to be some push that makes this worth it. You know what I mean? There's got to be, some metaphorical cliff that you're like, if you're not like, are you doing the right thing? If you're not terrified, that would be my question. Like, are you really living up to your potential if there's not a piece of you that's like white knuckling for a hot second? I don't encourage you to live on the edge all the time, because that's not where we're meant to be. But if there's not this kind of like terrified, I'm excited, I'm nervous, I'm excited, I'm nervous, like push, then I don't think your vision's big enough, or I think you're cutting yourself short.
I love your energy. You're fantastic. And I would love it if you could share with people where they can find you, and the best way you also like to work with people.
Yeah. So you can find me. My website is mariahscrystallibrary.com. You can find me on Instagram at Mariah G. Kimball, or at Mariah's Crystal Library. And I'm a projector. I don't know if anybody knows human design. So invitations are like, oh my gosh, so luscious for me. So I love to work with people who are just like ready for that shift and that change. All you have to do is reach out to me, and we can start that process, because oftentimes people who are just willing to reach out, even their lives start to change and things start to fall into place, because it starts that domino effect of like their transition, which is the best, legitimately the best. So sometimes even just having that initial conversation with me can start shifting things, which feels really good.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you. And thank you again. Thank you so much for being on the Well Aligned podcast. And I really appreciate all your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I appreciate you listening to the episode today with Mariah Kimball. You can find Mariah at mariahscrystallibrary.com. I will provide all of her contact information in the show notes. And of course, you know where to find me, Sandy at thewellaligned.com. Thanks for listening today. Until next time.